Hi Reddit, I'm here just to share some of my supernatural experiences with you. So let's get spooky. One of my best friends when I was growing up, lived in the most haunted area in our town. An Indian burial type place. My friend, let's call her Rachel, was constantly talking about how her house was haunted and how strange things would happen or she would hear noises. Now from my perspective, her house was awesome, along with her neighborhood being haunted. It also happened to be one of the nicest developments, older, but it was well respected. To say the least, I loved going to her house. And to top it off, her mom, let's call her Mrs. S, was the ultimate stay-at-home mom. Like, she decorated for everything, and she would bake the best homemade apple pies, and throw the most fun holiday parties. Rachel would also often have us, friends, over for school projects and slumber parties. Needless to say, I spent a fair amount of time in this house and surrounding area. Now to the night this story is about. It was another one of Rachel's slumber parties. I can't remember exactly what the occasion was, however I knew her dad was out of town. This is important. The day activities came and went and it was time for sleep. We had Rachel's room packed full of air mattresses. There was not an inch of floor visible. I was on an air mattress by her door, which was open. Her door was always open at night, and in the hallway at the top of the stairs her family, had an industrial-type fan that they would turn on at night to make noise. They did this because of the noises that the house would make. Prior to this night, I had not personally heard any type of questionable noises in the house. And honestly, I couldn't stand the noise maker at night, which definitely made it difficult for me to fall asleep. So on this night I was again having difficulties falling asleep. Now from the position I was on the air mattress, I could not see Rachel's bedside clock, and this was a time before everyone had iPhones, so I did not know what time it was. As I just laid there listening to the annoyingly constant humming of that dumb fan. At some point I heard Rachel's mom walk out of her room and down the stairs. I knew it was Rachel's mom because her, Rachel, door and her parents' door faced each other at the top of the stairs, and in between the two rooms was where that fan/noise maker was. I also knew it was Rachel's mom because her dad was out of town and all the other girls were still asleep in Rachel's room with me. Still unable to sleep, I heard what I could only assume to be Rachel's mom making breakfast downstairs. Mrs. S would make the best chocolate chip pancakes, and she would even have powdered sugar out and give you the perfect dusting on your pancakes if you wanted. Excited for these pancakes, I now couldn't stop thinking about them. I was now wide awake with anticipation. Some time had passed, again with no view of the clock. I couldn't tell for sure how much time had passed. But I knew it seemed odd. I had shifted myself so I had a clear view of the top of the stairs, as I was waiting for Mrs. S to come back up, to wake us all for breakfast. Again more time had passed. Warm rays of the morning light started to creep in through the blinds in Rachel's room and the windows at the bottom of the stairs, giving them the most welcoming glow. Fixated on the stairs, my heart stopped. And a chilling breath fell over me, the kind that gives you full body goosebumps. When I saw Mrs. S walk out of her room and walk down the stairs. I knew for a fact that she had not, I repeat, had not come back up the stairs from when I had originally heard her walk down them. And when I say, I heard her walk down them, I mean I heard footsteps leave her bedroom, which had internally caught my attention, and then heard her walk down the stairs. Step for step, there were 2 steps on that staircase that had a very prominent squeak, and it did not matter where on the step you placed your foot, the steps, always squeaked. And I heard them squeak. Now I started to smell the sweet aroma of Mrs. S cooking pancakes and bacon, smells that had not smelled earlier when I heard commotion in the kitchen, which I had believed was Mrs. S, frozen with the now deafening realization of what I had experienced. Mrs. S walked up the stairs to come wake us all up for breakfast. Nothing more happened on this particular day. However, after that night I started to have more and more supernatural experiences in that house, which I would be more than happy to share if you would like to hear more stories like this one. Please forgive me if there are any spelling/unclear wording mistakes. I'm typing this as I'm on a plane, and I just watched a ghost movie which made me think of this memory I had. And I just wanted to get it out and written as it is fresh on my mind. I'm more than happy to answer any questions and give additional info if needed. Jenny had always been afraid of the dark. She had lost her sight at a young age, and the world had always been a scary place for her. But she had learned to cope, and she had always felt safe as long as she was with her husband. He was her rock, her guide, and she trusted him with all her heart. So when he went away on a business trip, leaving her alone in their house, Jenny was terrified. She had never been alone before, and the thought of it filled her with dread. But she knew that she had to be strong. She was a grown woman, and she couldn't let her fears get the best of her. So she went about her day, doing all the things she normally did. She cooked meals, cleaned the house, and listened to her audiobooks. And every night, when she went to bed, she cuddled up next to her husband's pillow, pretending that he was there with her. It was a strange and unsettling routine, but it gave Jenny comfort. She knew that she was safe, and that was all that mattered. But one night, as she lay in bed, something changed. Jenny felt a presence in the room, a sense of unease that she couldn't shake. She tried to ignore it, telling herself that it was just her imagination. But as the minutes ticked by, the feeling grew stronger. Jenny couldn't take it anymore. She reached out and touched her husband's pillow, hoping to feel his familiar warmth. But instead of the soft cotton she expected, she felt something cold and clammy. She recoiled in horror, her heart racing as she realized that she wasn't alone. There was something in the room with her, something evil and malevolent. She could feel its presence, its breath on her neck, and she knew that she had to get out. She scrambled out of bed and ran for the door, her hands outstretched as she tried to find her way. She could hear the thing behind her, its footsteps pounding the floor as it followed her. She stumbled and fell, her hands scraping the floor as she tried to crawl away. She could feel the thing closing in, its hot breath on her neck as it prepared to strike. Just when she thought it was all over, she heard a voice in the darkness. It was her husband, his voice full of concern as he called out to her. Jenny's heart soared with hope. She struggled to her feet and ran towards the sound of his voice, her hands outstretched as she tried to find him. But as she drew closer, she realized that something was wrong. The voice was different, deeper and more sinister. It was the monster, mimicking her husband's voice in order to lure her in. Jenny froze in terror, her mind racing as she tried to think of a way out. She couldn't let the monster win, not after everything she had been through. She turned and ran, her feet pounding the floor as she fought to escape. She could hear the monster behind her, its footsteps growing louder and louder as it closed in. She didn't know how much longer she could keep running, but she knew that she had to try. She had to survive, no matter what. But it was too late. The monster was too fast, and before Jenny knew what was happening, it was on top of her. She screamed as it tore into her flesh, its razor-sharp claws slicing through her skin. She fought with all her might, but it was no use. The monster was too strong, and Jenny knew that she was doomed. She closed her eyes, accepting her fate as the monster's claws dug into her flesh. The end. Are you brave enough to enter the realm of the unknown? To face your deepest fears head-on? To face the horrors that lurk in the shadows? Check out free short horror stories on Amazon that will take only a minute to read, but will give you weeks of nightmares. 1-minute horror stories will keep you up at night, long after you've closed the book. Each book in this series delves into the depths of fear, where the line between reality and nightmare becomes blurred. From haunted houses to demonic possessions, from ghosts to monsters, these stories will leave you on the edge of your seat and keep you guessing until the very end. Each book is filled with 13 short horror stories that are spine-tingling and will have you checking over your shoulder the next time you are alone. I hope you enjoyed the sample story above. My grandma used to tell me scary stories when I was little. There's one I'll never forget. I was 10 years old when Grandma came to live with us. It was about 6 months after Granddad passed away, and I guess, looking back, she must have been lonely in that big house of theirs. Rattling around with only the grief and memories for company. So despite a few protests from Mum, my parents took her in. There were no protests from me. None at all. Grandma was loud, and fun, and I loved her. She had an almost limitless supply of boiled sweets, and she'd always slip me a couple whenever she saw me. She was always the first to stick up for me when I got in trouble, too. But it was her stories I loved best. Grandma had all kinds of stories. Stories about growing up during World War II, and stories about the things she'd get up to with her friends on the South Coast, after her family had been evacuated. Sad stories, funny stories, adventure stories. But it was her scary stories that were my favorite. Grandma had lots of scary stories. She told me she dabbled in the occult when she was a teenager, trying out Ouija boards with her friends. Tarot cards, fortune-telling. All that stuff. Most of the stories I'd laugh off, or forget about not long after she was done telling them, but there were a couple that really did spook me a bit. I was only 10 at the time, you have to understand. And Grandma certainly knew how to bring the stories to life. She'd shut off the lights in my room so only the glow of the night sky shone through the curtains, and she'd shuffle in real close. Close enough so I could see the wrinkles on her face, and smell the boiled sweets on her breath. Close enough so her deep blue eyes could stare straight into mine. She must have given me nightmares with a few of those tales, but now, years later, there's only one that I can still remember. Only one that stuck with me. The story about the shower, and Mr. Long Fingers. Grandma told me about Mr. Long Fingers one night after I asked about her baths. Grandma used to love her baths. She'd spend ages in them, light candles and incense, and lie in the tub humming to herself until the water turned cold. It drove my mum crazy. But when I asked her why she loved them so much, she said it was the only place she could relax. It was the only place that was safe for her to relax. You know, people like me, who are, well, more sensitive to certain things, we have to have baths, she told me seriously one night, shuffling closer on the bed. I couldn't possibly spend that long in the shower. It'd be far too risky. Grandma stared at me with those blue eyes of hers, unsmiling, and I knew it was time for one of her stories. One of the scary ones. I shivered with pleasure and pulled the covers up to my chin. Why is it risky, Grandma? She half turned to look out the window, watching me from the corner of her eye. Pausing for effect. I waited, feeling my heart rate pick up ever so slightly in my chest. Well, she said after a moment. It's only risky if you close your eyes, of course. If you close your eyes for longer than 10 seconds. What do you mean? Why? Well, do you ever play that game in the playground with your friends? The one where someone turns their back, and the others sneak up on them when they're not looking? I nodded, and Grandma nodded back. Exactly. So that's what it's like in the shower, when you have your eyes closed. That's what it's like with Mr. Long Fingers. A cold itch tickled back. Who's Mr. Long Fingers, Grandma? She let out a deep breath, as if she wished she hadn't said anything. Turned her head back to face mine. When she next spoke, she'd lowered her voice. No one knows, exactly, Grandma whispered. Some think it's a creature that's attracted to the heat and smell we give off in there. Others think it's a demon that finds a way into our realm through the dense steam clouds. No one can say for sure, because the only ones who have actually seen Mr. Long Fingers aren't ever going to be able to tell you. I pulled in a breath. Why not? Grandma shuffled closer along the bed and leaned towards me, leaving my question hanging in the air. Don't you worry about it, sweetheart. Don't worry your pretty head. As long as you remember the rules, you'll be fine. What rules? Well, when you're in the shower, you try not to close your eyes for too long. 5 seconds is fine, and 10 is just about okay, too. But any longer than that? Yeah. Then what? Well, any longer than that and you may just start to feel something in the room with you. Something watching. And if you ever go longer than 15 seconds, that's when you might start to hear a noise, too. Hear what? The soft tap 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 of fingers on glass. Fingers drumming against the glass door of the shower. If you do ever hear that noise, God forbid, will you make me a promise? What, Grandma? Promise me you'll never open your eyes. I barely slept that night. Hardly at all. I'd close my eyes and try to relax, but every time I did I'd imagine a face pressed against my bedroom window, staring in at me. And when I did finally get to sleep, I had nightmares. Bad ones. I had them all week, in fact. Dreams about disembodied eyes watching me in the dark, and long fingers reaching out to touch my exposed skin. It wasn't any better when I was awake, either. Not really. The shower was the worst. That's when Grandma's story really got to me. I'd never thought about it before, but suddenly I had trouble shutting my eyes in there. I'd be standing beneath the beating water, shampoo running down my face, and as soon as I squinted my eyelids closed I'd hear Grandma's words running through my head. 5 seconds is fine, and 10 is just about okay, too. But any longer than that, asterisk. I'd rub my hair fast, feeling the shampoo dripping off my chin, and as soon as I'd counted past 5 seconds I'd feel it. A sort of pressure. Not a feeling of being watched, exactly, but something close to that. I'd run my fingers faster and faster through my hair, frantically trying to get the suds out, and the ready blackness behind my closed eyes coupled with the rush of water in my ears would feel like a held breath. Like the silence before a scream. The seconds would race through my mind and I'd be so desperate to open my eyes again that I'd sometimes do it before my hair was rinsed fully clean, and my eyes would sting with shampoo. But before I shut them again I'd always be sure to peer out through the steamed glass door of the shower cubicle. Just to make sure I was still alone. ***. It wasn't long before Mum realized something was up. She heard me crying out in my sleep one night, and came in to comfort me. Asked me what the matter was, and it all came out. I told her about Grandma's stories, and about Mr. Longfingers. She got this look on her face when I was telling her like she used to get with me when I'd made her really mad. This wide-eyed, angry look. Only this time she wasn't angry with me. She was angry with Grandma. My parents' room was next to mine, and sometimes, if I pressed my ear against the wall, I could hear them talking in there. Soft whispers. That night, though, after Mum was satisfied I wasn't scared anymore and she'd gone back to her room, the whispers weren't soft at all. Oh no. I heard Mum hissing to Dad about Grandma. About the story she told me. Mum's voice floated through the wall, sharp and crisp. You know what your fucking mother said to him now, don't you, Simon? Dad's response was an unintelligible mutter. She's told him there's a monster that'll get him if he shuts his eyes in the shower. A monster. The poor kid's been having nightmares about it all week. Seriously, Simon, you'd better say something to her tomorrow morning, first thing. Or I will. Grandma came to visit me in my room the following night. That time, as she perched on the end of my bed, there were no stories. Nothing like that. Grandma just sat there and stared down at me, her blue eyes wide and sad. The light from the moon outside my window lit up her wrinkled face. You know I'd never let anything bad happen to you, don't you? She said after a moment. I nodded my head. I know, Grandma. You know I wouldn't let you come to any harm. I nodded again. Okay, good. That's good. She looked away from me for a moment, out the window. You know, the things I tell you in the evening are meant to help you, sweetheart. They're meant to toughen you up a bit. Protect you. She paused and shook her head. But maybe your mum's right. Maybe I went too far this time. She looked down at me and smiled. But even then, even though I was only 10 years old, I could tell it didn't quite reach her eyes. I'll tell you what, Grandma said. You know what I told you about Mr. Longfingers, and the shower? Well, I'm going to make sure you're safe. I'll scare the bastard off, how about that? It won't come back in a hurry if it has to face me. I stared up at Grandma, watching her face glow in the moonlight. Watching her smile down at me. I nodded my head, once. ***. I was the one who found her. I don't know when exactly it happened, but I'd guess it was about a week after we had that talk in my room. A week after she told me she wouldn't let me come to any harm. I woke early that morning, from a bad dream, to a heavy thumping sound. I sat bolt upright in bed. My room was quiet around me, and I couldn't hear anything from the wall that joined my parents' room either. But the house wasn't entirely silent. Floating down the hall, muffled by my closed door, I could hear the sound of rushing water. The noise of the shower. I leapt out of bed and ran down the upstairs hallway, heart already pounding in my chest. As soon as I reached the closed bathroom door, I started banging on it. A deep terror was welling up inside me like cold water from a well, something I couldn't place, and I kept banging and shouting, "Grandma," over and over again, even though she didn't respond. Off to my right I was dimly aware of voices from my parents' room, the sleepy shuffle of footsteps, but before they had a chance to make it out onto the landing I'd lifted my hand to test out the door handle, more out of instinct than because I thought it might actually open. But the door wasn't locked. I kept banging with my free hand and it swung suddenly inwards, bringing me face to face with a wall of steam. Heat struck my skin. I squinted my eyes against the damp fog and peered into the bathroom. And before Dad pushed me to one side, before everything around me descended into shouting, and tears, and chaos, I saw her. I saw Grandma. She was lying naked on the floor in the shower cubicle, the water beating down around her. Blue eyes bulging from her face. One hand was curled against her chest, like a dead bird, while the other trailed against the glass of the shower cubicle, the flailing finger marks she'd carved through the steam still clear and fresh. ***. It was a heart attack that killed her. That's what my dad told me. He said Grandma was old, and the thing had struck her quickly and suddenly. She would have died fast and without pain, Dad said. She wouldn't have suffered. I knew better, though. Even as a 10-year-old kid, I knew better. And years later, writing this as an adult, I still know better. I also know my wife and kids resent me for refusing to have a shower in the house. For insisting everyone take baths. They pretend it's okay, and they humor me, but I can tell they don't really understand it. Not at all. My wife thinks she does. She thinks I still carry the trauma of seeing my grandmother dying in front of me when I was little. I guess she's right, in a way. But she doesn't know the full truth. Nobody does. And no one would believe me even if I told them. No one would believe me if I said the reason I don't take showers, the reason I haven't had one since I was 10 years old, isn't because I'm scarred from the sight of a dead body. It's because all those years ago, when I crept back into the still hot bathroom after the paramedics had taken Grandma's body downstairs, I made sure to check the marks her fingers had carved through the steamed glass of the shower cubicle. And those